Robert was born December 27, 1941, and started school at South Waco Elementary as a first grader and graduated from there with honors. Was the salutatorian of his class when he graduated from high school. He was the academic whiz. He's one of those kind of people who didn't have to study. I was kind of jealous though, because I had to study so hard to learn anything. But he also had to work because of our economic condition, we had to work. Robert was very fortunate to go to Baylor. Being perfectly honest with you, some of us did not want him to do that, because during that time they were throwing rocks at us if we crossed Baylor. We had to go around the campus, so you couldn't go across the campus during that time. And so we didn't want him to be involved in something like that. But he knew what we didn't know, that he had somebody that's going to help him get across there. So God was kind to him.
Since he was at Baylor and they needed to place him for student teaching, he became the first to do student teaching in an all-white school out at Tennyson Junior High. Teaching was an outlet for him, a way to reach other people, help children to reach their goals. I think that was foremost in his mind.
I was 50 years old when I graduated from Guadalupe Seminary, and I just wished he could have lived to seen it, because that what he instilled in everybody: get an education.
It had always been believed that education was the equalizer. It was always stated that if you got an education, you could be equal with anyone. He was the first African American to graduate from Baylor in 1967. It was just two aunts bringing a niece and nephew together. By the third or fourth year of our marriage, he had gotten ill.
And so he started preaching. He first pastored the church where our daddy pastored.
After he went into the ministry, some years later, I went into the ministry, in fact, under him. And so he was my friend, pastor, a pastor friend.
Even in with sick as well, he still had compassion for people. Robert was a very compassionate person.
He never let his disabilities stand in the way of progress or helping people.
I was at church back in, I think it would have been about 1976. There was an announcement made at church asking if anyone thought they could be trained as a television announcer, contact Reverend Robert Gilbert. The Association for Selective Career Opportunities was, I think, the group that Reverend Gilbert and 4 or 5 other gentlemen worked with that were looking to place minorities and give them career opportunities.
As nurses who had never had a job as a nurse because they didn't have blacks in nursing. Beauticians, I got to go out to MCC cosmetology.
The first African-American female to anchor the news, the local news. Reverend Gilbert is my all-time hero. And he was pretty inspiring, because here was this man in a wheelchair who, when you talked to him, you listened to him, you were inspired by him, and you thought, if he can do this. I mean, you didn't even think about him in a wheelchair, yet he was very, very, he couldn't do anything without assistance, but he was making a huge mark in the community.
If he saw a need, he went after the need and tried to find out what you need to do to get it done. Decent and in order, not, not radical, but just very calm person.
Not only was opening doors that he could go through, but he opened it wide enough for other people to go through as well.
I was the first African American to be elected as county commissioner in McLennan County. And one of my adamant supporters and advisors was Reverend Gilbert.
About 8 years before his death, he had had a fall and open heart surgery, so he wasn't able to walk anymore. And our sons had to lift him from bed and into the bathtub, things like that, and lift him into the car, into the wheelchair. So they really didn't have a childhood. They spent most of their youth taking care of their father. Although there were health barriers, he said there were no excuses for not doing what you wanted to do or what you set your mind to do.
He just had that drive about him, even though he had crippling arthritis. He had a faith. Number one, he believed in his God. He believed in his religion. He believed in his family. He believed in his community.
Cafeteria workers weren't getting fair wages, so they asked him, and he went before the school board to get further wages, better wages for them. Whatever came up or any crisis in the community, people were always calling on him to do it. Because he was bedridden, unless someone got him up, people were always at our house. Sometimes I couldn't go to bed because people were in my bedroom late at night, so but the boys and I accepted it. We knew that was part of his ministry, the things that he wanted to do. He gave his all, withstood even getting our house being burned while he was on the school board, a mystery, especially when things were turbulent. People would have to come and check our house out to be sure it was safe to come in.
Love God with all his heart, soul, and mind.
For people to see him, they knew that God was moving in his life because he was doing things even after pen strokes and heart surgery and not being able to walk.
He had never complained until the last week of his life. And he said, "I'm tired." I said, "What do you mean you're tired?" He said, "I'm tired." When he passed away, every light in the hospital went out. And when the lights came back on, he was gone. Nobody really said anything except we thanked God for his life and then thank God he wasn't suffering anymore.
He showed us that if you had courage, you could overcome any obstacle in your way. And he taught us all to always help the less fortunate.